Hi everybody. Today, in our latest edition of Through the Bible in 5 Minutes, we're going to take a look at what many people believe to be the most difficult book in all the Bible to understand, the book of Leviticus. In Leviticus, God shares his heart with the Israelites. He tells them explicitly that he wants to dwell among them, that he wants to be their God, and he wants them to be his people. You may recall that in the second half of the book of Exodus, God gave instructions for building this tabernacle where the Israelites would worship him during their wilderness wanderings. Well, in the book of Leviticus, instructions are given for how that worship at the tabernacle is to take place. Now, although God had expressed his love for the Israelites and desire to be their God, every love relationship must be two-way. And in Leviticus, God explains what he expects of the Israelites in return. And his expectations can be summed up very simply. He was looking for holy sacrifices, holy priests, and a holy people. Now, the word holy simply means something that's been separated for special use, something that has been dedicated to God's purposes. So let's break that down and see how it relates to both sacrifices, priests, and people. First of all, holy sacrifices. God said that the Israelites were to bring animals to be sacrificed at the tabernacle, and the blood of those animals would cover the sins of the people. And he made that explicitly clear by saying that when an Israelite sinned, they brought a sacrifice to the tabernacle. They were to confess out loud before the priest the sin that they had committed. They were then to lay their hands upon the sin of that animal, symbolically transferring their guilt to the animal. And then the blood that was spilled by the priest would cover over their sins. But the animals that they brought were to be without any defect, blemish, disease of any kind. They had to be physically perfect, a cow, a goat, or a sheep. Now, if you were poor, you couldn't afford to bring a big animal. You could bring 2 doves or 2 pigeons. And very interestingly, in the New Testament era, when Joseph and Mary brought their sacrifice to the temple, they brought 2 birds, indicating that the earthly family of Jesus was very poor. But whether goat, sheep, or birds, they had to be physically perfect, a gift worthy of the God to whom it was being offered. Second, holy priests. The priests who offered these sacrifices were to be completely dedicated to the service of God. And this was symbolized in a very powerful ritual where the high priest would anoint them with blood on the lobe of their right ear, the thumb of their right hand, and the big toe of their right foot, indicating that they were to listen to the word of God, do the work of God, and walk in all the ways of God. Finally, a holy people. God reveals in Leviticus what he is like. He shares his heart, his values, so that his people know how to act, since they are going to be like him and reflect his character and his values. And it was quite a revelation, because God was entirely unlike anybody, any God that the Israelites had ever been exposed to in Egypt, or that they would be exposed to in the land of Canaan. Now, we know about the 10 commandments that were articulated in Exodus. There's actually 613 commands found throughout the Old Testament. Many of them, and some of the most important ones, are found in the book of Leviticus. Just a quick sampling. In Leviticus, God says that immigrants are to be treated with great respect and subject to the same laws as the Israelites were subject to. You may have heard of the lex talionis, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That is found for the very first time in the book of Leviticus. And although many people think it's a sanction for mutilation vengeance, it's just the opposite. It's a principle establishing proportionate justice. The punishment should fit the crime. Well, nowhere is God's character revealed in more vivid detail than in the laws regarding sexual purity. Incest, adultery, homosexuality, bestiality are all described and forbidden in the book of Leviticus. And you might be thinking, well, why in the world did God have to talk about those things? Well, it's because in the ancient world, most of the religions were fertility cults. When people in Egypt or Canaan went to the temple, they did so to engage in sexual orgies and cult prostitution, thinking that by doing that, they would encourage their gods to bless their fields and vineyards with abundant crops. God said, I am nothing like any of those gods. I'm a good, holy, and just God.